This is my 2001 Mercedes CLK 55. I've had this car for 6 years now. I bought this car in 2014. I think it had just about over 60,000 miles on it. And as of today, it's got about 151,000 miles on it. A couple years ago, I sold it to a friend of mine, and then I ended up buying it back, actually. And me and him, he's actually a really close friend of mine, so we kind of stayed in touch the whole time. And actually, despite a lot of what people say about Mercedes, particularly older ones, it's been a pretty reliable car. So I run into high mileage Mercedes cars all the time, but the interesting part of this high mileage Mercedes is it's an AMG. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you guys all the little quirks this car has, especially at the mileage, and we're going to see just how nice time was to it. The first thing I want to show you guys is how dirty this thing is. So this car has all the brake dust. This is, you know, these brakes especially, I think they're like metallic pads. It'd be even worse if the car was black, because then the whole thing would just look dirty all the time. This car gets driven. Let's just say that. This car gets driven. This car gets driven through salt, snow, winters, every single year. So it's going to have all the bubbling here. Sadly, this car even has the rear quarter rust as well. Despite all the blemishes this car has, though, it's actually a pretty decent looking car. Like overall, I really think it's got some nice lines to it. It's kind of a really unique car too, just because Mercedes in the late 90s, they were transitioning from like their older cars, and then I think Daimler bought them out like in the late 90s or so. So then right in the middle of that, they came out with this thing. This car came out in, I think, 1996, 1997, and it had a little minor facelift in the year 2000. This car is a 2001. I really like all the curves, especially on that 3/4 shot. This car actually has several characteristics of both new and old Mercedes. You can see the ribbed taillights, classic of a lot of the older Mercedes cars. The car has the circular, separated front headlights, as well as the useless headlight washers, which I'll go over in a minute. And how could you possibly mistake the grille and the hood ornament? This is probably good enough time to show you guys the inside of the car now, where I can show you some of the other classic Mercedes features, as well as some of the cool stuff that this car has. You can't help but notice one of the first things you look at when you get in this car is the nice stitching on the steering wheel. Excellent attention to detail from Mercedes. It's starting to show its age, but it's still holding up fairly well. So just like on the classic Mercedes, you can expect to find wood pretty much everywhere. You've got real wooden panels here on your seat controls, all along the center console, and even going across the dashboard. The car has even got metal door handles. Alright, now I think I'll show you guys some of the cool weird features of this car. It's actually pretty impressive for being a 2001 Mercedes. You know, they're just kind of coming out of the analog era and into the digital world, and there's already all these really cool features. So the car has these menus that you can scroll through and see different parts of the car. There's messages. So anything on this screen, you can use these bottom arrows to kind of go through different systems in the car. We'll call it systems. So here you can see how many miles are on it, and if you start going through these top switches, it'll show you different things related to the vehicle itself, such as the mileage. Over here, the car actually has a sensor in it that can check the oil level. Not bad. Yeah, there we go, the temp indicator. So that's actually something that no longer works on this car. One of the few things that doesn't is it doesn't quite... Yeah, I don't know, guys. You tell me. Best guess on that one. You can also see the indicator over here is starting to go a little bit. The clock works perfectly fine, but that little indicator over there is actually for the gear shifter, so you know what gear you're in. This will tell you if you have any malfunctions with the car. This isn't going to tell you things like you need an O2 sensor or something like that, but it will tell you if you need some washer fluid added. It'll tell you if your oil level is a little bit low. You know, things like that. Over here, we got a couple standard things. You've got 2 heated seat settings. You've got your 4-ways, locks, tow mode. That's for the transmission so you don't blow it up. You know, pretty standard stuff here. Passenger heated seats. But what are these two? Yep, as you guys can see, my headlights are now wet. They are wet. And so is my hood. So what does this guy do? To show you what that button does, I'm going to climb in the back here, which isn't the worst place in the world to be. I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but I got a little bit of room here. You know, I'm feeling pretty comfy. But you know what would really hit the spot right back here? A nice headrest. Oh wait. They thought of that. And it's even adjustable. Oh yeah, wasn't I supposed to tell you about what that button did? Here, we're gonna go back down to the climate control. Pretty standard stuff here. You got your recirculate, dual climate zones for each side, 1 fan setting. You could turn the air conditioning off with your economy mode on your $85,000 sports car. But what does this rest button do? Here, we're gonna find out. So to use that, we actually have to take the key off. Let me shut my door here. So the rest mode is designed to keep your passengers warm in the wintertime if the driver went into the store for something. So you press that, and there's actually an electric water pump under the hood that circulates hot water through the car's heater core, so you can still have heat even though the key is not in the ignition, and as you can see, the engine is not running. You can't adjust the blower speed when it's in this, but you can tell it what temperature you'd like. The fact that you have heat in that is pretty impressive. Pretty standard ashtray, 12-volt power. Here you've got your winter and sport mode, which is pretty cool. When in sport, the car actually starts in first gear, you know, like a normal vehicle. It shifts a little bit quicker. And when you're in winter mode, it'll start in second gear. It's a little smoother, lower pressures to the transmission. Here's another cool feature the car's got. It's got a nice rear sunshade to protect you from the sun. If we keep moving down, we've got our power window switches in the center console. There's nothing on the doors in that area. The only thing on the doors is just the handle and the seat controls. More storage. This is kind of cool. You've got a top component for storage. I like to keep my insurance card right in there. And then you have this lower storage where you can store even more things. Yep, those were cigars. Alright, all these switches are cool, but I think it's about time we start it up. Hood release is right under here. Nice red lever, can't miss it. Little squeaky. But the important thing is they actually hold up. So they don't give you a whole lot to look at just with all these plastic covers on it. But it's a dual intake engine, and there's two filters right here, 2 air filters, and they all come together in the back there. This car is kind of strange because it is a drive-by-wire throttle, but they put the box under here. So your throttle positioning sensor is actually right here. I've never changed mine, but if I ever needed to, it's right there. Here's another cool thing I actually really like about this car. So this is where you put in the window washer, that's shared between the windshield and the headlights that you saw earlier. But if you look inside here, those are actually pipes, and these are coolant lines. So when this car gets warm, it's actually heating up the window washer, so you can de-ice your headlights or you can de-ice your windshield. I thought that was actually fairly clever. Anyway, we should probably take this thing on the road. All right, let's get going. I can show you guys what I think of this car. It's a little tight on the steering. It's not, I wouldn't say it's an easy car. You can't turn the wheel with your pinky. It's got this like old school drag-link suspension like you'd see on like a pickup truck from the 1950s. I wish I was kidding. I don't know why they did that on an AMG Mercedes, but it handles pretty well, all things considered. Plenty of power, that's for sure. Even on 150,000 miles, still going just fine. So this car has this kind of quirky transmission. I think I might have mentioned it earlier. It's got this thing they call touch shift, and basically you can sort of control the gears yourself, but you have to pretty much let the car, it's more of like an automatic with like a little bit of manual controls. So there's an indicator on the dash, and basically when you shift it up or down, all it really does is tell you the highest gear that it'll let the car go into. So if you have it set to 2 and you're in sport mode, it's going to start in first, and then it's going to shift to second, and then that's it. It's not going to go to third. It's not going to do anything else. That's it. And if you have it set to winter mode, the car actually is going to start in second gear. It's going to stay in second gear. It's not going to do anything. So it's really not exactly what I would call intuitive. But if you want to downshift to go through a tunnel, that's a whole different story. Most times when I drive this car, I do just leave it in winter mode. It starts in second gear. It's a little smoother. No jerking around when you come to a stop. The car likes to kind of downshift as you slow down, as I'd imagine most automatics would. So this one, because of the solenoids I have in it, it kind of like jerks, like almost like a manual. Think of like, you know, someone just letting off that clutch really quickly. It kind of does something like that. All right, now let's see what happens. Woo! Plenty of power, even with all this mileage on it. How can you be sad when you hear that exhaust sound and you get, you know, bumped in the seat a little bit? You know, you don't have to like hold on with 2 hands or hold on for dear life, but you can scare your passengers with that. Mercedes themselves would never tell you this was really much of a handling car, but it can definitely hold its own, especially on some of these, you know, more tight turns. It really does stick to the road pretty well. Part of it's just, you know, knowing how to drive it. I know exactly what the car is going to do. It's a very consistent feel. It's actually pretty great, you know, for what it is. It's not like a Ferrari or, you know, a Lotus or hell, even a Mazda Miata, of course. But you know, it's a big, heavy, comfy car that handles well. It's like a speedboat. You can call this car a speedboat. Don't know if I'll ever get tired of that exhaust. So even though this car is pretty quick and it handles pretty nice, and the transmission can shift quickly if you have it in sport mode, it's actually a pretty comfy car to drive. You know, when you're just driving normally, it's got heated seats, which feel great. You know, their power. steering wheel's even pretty comfortable. It's got these, like, you know, grips on it. It's actually a really nice car, you know, like for what it is. Again, if you can respect this car for what it is, and, you know, even how old it is, it's really not a bad car. Even the sound system is, this car I never upgraded it. It's got the original speakers in it. It's got, I think it's got 2 8-inch woofers on the rear deck there. It's got 3 speakers in each door. One is a tweeter, so 3 on each door, 6, and then you got the 2 in the back. It's got 8 speakers. It's a 2001. It's got 8 speakers. I don't know how many watts it is. I believe it's got like its own internal amp. It's like a Bose sound system or something like that. But yeah, really, it sounds good. This car, just because of how old it is, I think one of the speakers, the one in front of my left knee here, that one looks like it's, I think it checked out a little bit ago. It just completely stopped working, but all the other ones are working fine. So I probably should just upgrade the whole thing, but it's not really a priority. You know, this car is just a driver for me. It's not really like a leisure vehicle or anything, so I'm really happy with the way it is now. Really appreciate you watching. I hope I inspired someone to not completely run away from a German car, because they actually can be pretty reliable. So